as you can imagine, or maybe if you know me, this type of pictures usually get to me quite heavily. And another variation of it was in the Daily Mirror, so British newspaper. So that's the exact picture with just the text that they added. And the other one is from The Guardian. And this one, they switched it around, right? They took a mirror image, and it's actually, this one is for you. So this is the cover, right? And this one is for you to actually send money, right? So this picture is for the people who are working in this field. It's a picture that's very, very well known, and that people talked a lot about. So that's why I chose this one for the topic. So the issue for me is connected to the fact that when you look at the picture of Luke, there is no way you can understand what's happening. You see the consequences. Obviously, he's super skinny, he's got a big stomach, and his eyes are usually their eyes are usually empty. But to tell you the truth, it's not telling you exactly what the problem is, right? So, yes, when you look at the picture of Luke, you may have lots of feelings or none, and you'll see this is one of the problems. What bothers me, and it's connected also to my work with volunteering, is that by looking at this picture, there's no way that you will understand what really happened. And what really happened in Malawi in 2002 is not actually connected to Malawi being poor. Actually, Malawi, before these three things kind of combined, is a country where people could feed themselves quite easily, right? Sure, they didn't have Burger Kings or McDonald's, but they could produce their own food, and they've always been pretty okay food-wise, right? So that bothers me, because obviously when you see the picture, it's like, they're poor, they need our help. Well, actually, not really. Yes, they needed help, but we came in too late, as usual. But so the first reason was actually the weather. So yes, we are responsible for this. In developed countries, the pollution we create has an impact all around the world, with changes of climate, weather patterns, and Malawi went through almost 3 years of really, really dry weather. So they could still make food, but it was less food, right, because of the weather. So maybe, yes, we're responsible in that sense. The best one is the second one. There was an organization, it's the International Monetary Fund, who told the government to sell their stock of food. They told them to get out of debt. It was something related to a loan from South Africa. To get out of your debt, the best way to do it is sell your stock of food. It's usually cereals that they do that for. And that's the International Monetary Fund. Really smart people. Not really. And the third factor was corruption. So the government is like, well, the International Monetary Fund told us, sell your food stock, let's sell everything. The International Monetary Fund said it was, I think, 60% of it, keep 40%. But another big issue in countries like Malawi is corruption. The government is corrupt. So they'll do their best to get as much money as they can, right? So instead of keeping 40%, they sold everything. So when the crisis hit, they had no food in the country. Or they had food, because that's the corrupt part, but they were selling it at such a high price that most people couldn't buy it. Right? So that's my issue. Famines since the 1970s are not connected to poverty anymore. It's a political game. And I know it's horrible to say it, but this is what it comes down to. I got a wonderful, I don't know, but very interesting book about this. So if you want to learn more, there is a Japanese translation of it. So that's what bothers me. the pictures we see are still like, this is a catastrophe, we couldn't predict, we need to help. That's not true. We could predict, and sometimes we create them, right? So that's my first issue, right? Those pictures are not showing what the real problems are. And I'm not asking to remember what the real problems were, just keep that in mind. Usually it's not helping you understand what the real problem, in this case, the real problems are. Yeah, if you look at Luke, kind of hard to figure out what's going on, besides the fact that he definitely looks poor, lonely, and sad, right? So for me, the journalist's responsibility, I know they need to make people react, right? So kids work really well, kids who are sad work even better, but they should have more balance in how they're presenting this, right? So for me, my solution would be show the whole problem. Don't just focus on the poor kids who are dying, but try to help people understand that yet again, we let it happen, right? As a global world, I think everybody is responsible. Actually, Japan has a lot of investment in Malawi. I didn't do this on purpose, but yes, so that's a connection you can feel if you look at JICA. They are very, very, very present in Malawi. So my point is, don't just show people things that's going to make them emotional. And you'll see actually a lot of people don't even react to this anymore because we've seen them too much. If we could better understand the situation, I think we'd take better actions, right? Instead of sending money, which fuels corruption, we might be able to dispatch food, which might be less tempting for people who are corrupt. Or on a long-term basis, trying to help the farmers to face bad weather, right? Help them with irrigation, help them with seeds that are more resistant if there is too much rain or not enough rain. So like help at the bottom level, right? The people who can really make the food happen. The second one, my second issue, and let's also focus on the Africans in quotation marks. My second problem is that we keep showing Africans, and I'll get there in a minute, as people who have to be helped. And I've been to a couple African countries, but especially my experience is with India, and I can tell you, people hate that. Unless they've made it their job, right? They've decided to, okay, I'm just going to do my best for other people to feel horrible about me and give me money. Let's say everybody I've met who are meant to feel incompetent or, oh, poor you, they hate it. Basically, they just don't like it. And again, the African things, you have to understand that Africa is a huge continent. It's not a country. And on this continent, you have so many, many, many countries that are completely different from one to the other. And they don't speak the same language, they don't have the same culture, they don't have the same religion, they have such different history. So that's another thing they hate, right? It's like, I'm African. No, not really. I'm from Ghana, or I'm from Eritrea, or I'm from Tunisia, right? And that's another thing we tend to do. And my tongue slips at times too, right? I'm not saying I'll never do it. But that's another issue, but that's the thing, right? People have to be helped. But if you look at the studies that have been done, if only we asked them what needs to be done, I honestly believe we would see less of these issues, right? It's always the rich country coming in, like the International Monetary Fund, and telling them what to do. We tend to look down on them, like they're not capable, they're not smart enough, they're not educated enough to find their own solutions. And when you look at grassroots movements, so people who are actually listening to them, they can really make a difference. So to me, I honestly think these pictures are kind of, it's a stereotype. We keep entertaining, right? It's still there. We make it bigger. We make it, trying to make it even more emotional. So believe me, from what I've read in my own experience, they do know. And so I wish these pictures would also show what they're doing to try to improve the situation. Not just the bad stuff, but how about the good stuff that they're trying to do for themselves. So that, I guess that's what I was saying, right? Listen to them, give them a voice, so that we can be very helpful and not just feel good about what we do. And actually Oxfam, and I will mention them quite a bit today, had this, and again, as you can see, it's based on pictures because people understand those much better. They had a campaign a couple years ago and decided to focus on, yes, what's going right in Africa, right? In different African countries. They made a point at showing that there is food. And yes, there is food there, right? They're not all starving. And some of those pictures, especially this one, I don't know, I find it, there's something about it. I like the colors, I like the angle, I like the fact they didn't have to ask permission because you can't see people's face. I'm not good at this when I take pictures. So, yes, let's make Africa famous for its food markets, not just food shortage, right? When you don't have enough food. So, not just think of what's negative, but also focus on what they're doing to make it better. So, that's what I was saying. So, give Africans, again, I hate that thing, but since Oxfam went for that, I'm not going to try to argue. So, let's give them a voice. Because honestly, I believe experts, governments, and officials have a motivation that is not always the well-being of people, right? They want either more power, they want to control part of the country, there's money involved, corruption again. So I trust the people more than governments these days. There are a lot of organizations out there who give these people a voice. And there are resources where we can find them. And if you want to do volunteer work, I would go for them, not the big organization led by the governments. So my third issue, and that's what I've been telling you, everybody think, oh, this picture, it's going to be wonderful. People are going to give money so that we can help these people. But actually, they've been doing studies. A lot of schools of journalism, the most famous one is the one in Chicago, has been studying this. And they've noticed that actually we don't react to them anymore. At least not the way we used to, right? Writing big checks or getting all fired up and this is it, I'm gonna help, right? We don't react to them anymore, or at least the way we used to. So that's the third problem. That's my question 5, right? The word is, I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to say it today. Desensitized? Okay, here we go. That's a very fancy word, but that's what you'll read in newspapers, right? So it has sense in it, and when you put usually DE in the front, it means it's removed, right? So our feelings, our senses are not reacting anymore to these pictures. So that was the reason why Oxfam created this ad campaign, right? They wanted to balance. And again, as you can see, I'm not happy with the fact they used Africa, right, and didn't go specific in terms of country. So that's why they created that positive campaign, because all people usually see, especially in Europe, is the starving kids, right, or war. So what they have done, and this is where I'm using the Oxfam report, so that's number 6 in your booklet. So the survey shows that famine pictures have now actually a negative impact. Instead of being helpful, they're harming. They're making people less reactive and less engaged, right? So yes, people do realize that hunger is a problem, right? And 47% of the people surveyed said so, right? So a good half of the population realize it is a problem. They understand it's a problem. And people also know that hunger can be stopped, right? It's not like a curse. It's not God's will, and this is just going to happen. They also realize it can be stopped. 3 in 4, so that would be 74% said so. So basically, people realize hunger, the reality of hunger, right? They understand it, but 1 in 5 believe they cannot do something about it, right? So on one side, they understand this is a problem, it can be stopped, but as far as I'm concerned, I can't do anything about it. And that was the starting part for Oxfam, is that, what? Hey, you understand there's a problem, it's a bad one, but you don't think you can do anything or you're not responsible for it? And so that's why they started doing the research about the impact of these pictures on people's thinking. And this is what they found. So basically, it's a problem of overexposure, meaning you see it too much, right? You're exposed too much to these pictures. So overexposure to negative media and advertising portrayals of Africa and developing countries lead to sense of disempowerment. We see so much of it that we think it's helpless. We can't do anything about it. We don't have the power to do it, right? Just imagine when you have tons of homework, you probably feel like, I can't do this, right? The sense of, I have the power to do all my homework goes out the window. It's the same thing. The more pictures you see, the constant exposure to these pictures take the sense of power away from people. And instead of going, I could make this better, it's, I can't. So too much makes people feel powerless. Some comments that people made about these pictures, they're depressing, obviously, but the next one is the one that manipulative. People feel like these pictures are trying to use their feelings so that they will do something, and they don't like that, right? They don't like to be manipulated, and as I was saying, hopeless, right? They don't see any hope because they see so many bad situations that are like, well, then why try, right? It's not going to work. So the study by Oxfam found that 3 in 5, so 3 people out of 5 people, are desensitized by these pictures. And it's not just hunger, it's also drought, so when there is no water for a very long time, and disease, right? They just don't react to it anymore. And actually, to push it a little further, 1 in 4, so 20, almost a quarter, that was 23% in the study, they actually turn their head. They don't want to see it, right? So they're not ever going to try to understand the situation. They see Luke Perry, they change the channel, they change the website, they don't want to look at it, right? So then they are not engaged at all. So they will not understand what the problem is. So for me, considering that, and this is one, it was just the easiest one to share with you. I mean, so many schools of journalism are studying the impact of this picture. It's not just Oxfam. Everybody comes to the same conclusion. It is not working anymore. We use them to get people to help, but it's not working anymore. They are not feeling engaged. They feel manipulated. They just don't want to see it, right? So it's not working anymore. So that's why I think, as I said, for my first solution, show the whole problem, give Africans a voice. And my third suggestion for this issue is what Oxfam tried to do. It's just give a balanced image, right? It is not all about war and disease and hunger and natural disasters, right? It's not just that. I mean, like in any situations, it's not just all the negatives. So trying to balance the image that we give of the country. So how about, nowadays, and you have lots of TED Talks about this. If you look and just type Africa, you'll see that they've created schools online because they realize that students cannot go to school. It takes too much time. They have to buy uniforms. They need to be able to, take care of things. So instead of telling them go to school, well, they'd rather have 4 or 5 computers with internet access in the center and have the kids be able to study when they can. And that has changed the lives of so many of them. Same thing for university. Instead of forcing people to leave their families, who, sometimes it's 6-7 hours away from where they live, well, just give them a chance to do it again with technology. Because surprisingly, it's easier to have an internet connection than to have electricity in some parts of the world, because internet is satellite. You don't need to have the cables, whereas electricity, usually you need the cables, right? And that is when the problem kicks in, because the grid is complicated to build. So there are so many positive things out there happening in all these African countries, but usually we don't hear about them. So as we talked about, yes, the news tend to be negative, but in this situation, it's, again, not helping us, right? So trying to bring a little bit more positive in how we show all these African countries, I think that would be a great way to help out more. So, and I believe that's definitely journalists' responsibilities to do this, right? Trying to have a more balanced image. So there is hope, but we need to show it, because it's easy to just get drowned in the negative stuff. Yeah. So that's kind of my take on it. I know I'm not answering the question that we have had initially, but it's because, as I said, my head tells me one thing and my heart tells me something else. So I decided to focus on famine pictures because those I can have my head and my heart agree, right? Yes, those kids are victims, but there are lots of things we can do so that it doesn't happen anymore. Just showing those pictures is not going to be putting an end, right, to the problem. And some of these pictures are part of the campaign. Also, the fact that, we usually see all, deserts and there's nothing happening. And, well, actually, a lot of countries have seriously stunning nature and absolutely amazing mountains and seaside, and so lots of positive things that we could also emphasize on, right? We used to have a teacher here from Zambia, and she took students to Zambia to show them how wrong their image of Africa was, and most students came like, eh? Because Zambia is a gorgeous country, and that's, I think, actually, that's from Zambia. I'm not sure anymore, so I'll have to double check. But yes, beautiful nature, very highly educated people in Zambia, and no, war issue, no food issue, none of that. So there are other things we could do instead of just focusing on the starving kid.